You said no.
All right, so we're going to start letting attendees join for a minute, and then we will get started. All right, John, I'm sure people will continue to join for the next few moments. We have a bunch of people in now, so you can go ahead and get started.
I'll wait till we get up to about 40, right? We're at 29 now, I see. I don't know what you see.
Yeah, sure.
Give it another minute or two. All right. All right, I think we're going to get going here. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Nisivoccia Roundtable. I want to thank everybody for coming today on this. Looking outside, it looks like it's clearing up out there pretty nice. It's going to be a nice weekend. Hope you all have a great Halloween on Monday and enjoy this nice fall weekend. Do something fun and festive. Again, thank you for coming today. I think we have a great presentation planned for you. We've got Roy, Tom, and Judy on board today, giving two different presentations. As far as me, I'm Jon Mooney. I'm going to be in the background watching for questions. So if you have any and you want to throw them in the Q&A or the chat, I'll be monitoring those as we go along. I will interrupt our speakers when they catch their breath and it's an appropriate time to jump in. So feel free to ask away. The whole part of a roundtable is for us to exchange ideas and comments and answer any questions that you may have. I want to thank Bud Jones and Jon Rheinhardt for helping put this together as well, doing a lot of the work getting this together today. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jon Rheinhardt, and he's going to start introducing our guests.
Thanks. For those of you that don't know me, I am Jon Rheinhardt. Most people stop accepting my calls about a week before the roundtable, or 2 weeks before, because they know I'm asking them to speak. So now Judy knows that, so she'll stop accepting my phone calls as well. So the two gentlemen that we asked to join us today, Roy Rigatano and Tom Rochelle, both had some experience with the comptroller's office in that sick time payout report that came out, which is why I asked them to participate in the CFO Roundtable, just to share their experiences, what they went through. And I think it's important to hear how everybody experienced the process. So I'm going to start with Roy Rigatano. Roy is a CFO. He's been a volunteer firefighter since 1982, a fire subcode official. He's been on the arson squad for Bergen County from 91 to 93. He went to William Patterson College. He's got a whole history as a QPA, CTC, CMFO, RPPO. Roy actually, interestingly enough, has his first degree, or his first life experience was as a biochemist at Allied Chemical from 1977 to 1987. So he was the original Breaking Bad. He worked here in Bergen County from 1988 to 1998 as a fiscal analyst. He has been in Elmwood Park since 1988. He's been in Palisades Park since 1991 and Rochelle Park since 2001. He was in the city of Garfield from 2000 to 2022, all as a CFO. So Roy he's been everywhere. I've known Roy a long time. I didn't know when I first met you, Roy, but Roy's really good to field. Roy also does a CMFO review for the state exam for people, does it for free, gives up his Thursday mornings, and helps those that can't pass the exam to get through and pass. And he's got a huge success rate in getting people to pass that exam. That was not on his resume. Tom Rochelle I've known for a long time as well. Tom is the Deputy Manager, Chief Financial Officer for Moorestown Township. He is a certified municipal finance officer, certified tax collector, and has a Pennsylvania CPA license. Tom has been working in Moorestown for 25 years, and on and off, Tom has served as the township manager, which is a tough town if you've ever been down there. It's got a lot going on and a lot of issues, and Tom kept all of his hair throughout that. I can't say the same. Tom worked as the treasurer for Pennsauken Township for 5 years. He was an auditor with Bowman and Company, doing municipal and school audits for 4 years, graduated from St. Joe's University with a major in accounting. And he is currently a very happy Phillies and Eagles fan. He added to his bio, so that's very funny. So welcome, Tom and Roy. Katie, if you could stop sharing your screen. I'm going to share my screen with a review of, nope, not that one. I'm having issues here this morning. Give me a second. I got too many screens open. It's my problem. Nope. You still seeing the Excel files?
Looks like you had your presentation, John, originally.
Oh, it did?
Try it again.
All right, there we go.
There it is.
You got it.
All right, now, I think everybody knows how we run this. Is if you've got questions, feel free to ask them as we go along. As there's an appropriate time to break and pose those questions to the panelists, we can do so. John, Mooney, and myself will moderate those questions. So the reason for the session we just talked about is the comptroller's report that came out in July of 2022. I have here, it's a fact or fiction, and we're going to talk about that and what's happened with the comptroller's office. So it all started back in 2005, 2006. There were 3 different task force formed. One was formed by Governor Cody at the time by executive order. One was formed by the State Commission of Investigation, and then the legislature couldn't be left out, so they formed their own. So with 3 different bodies all looking at public employees' benefits, primarily sick and vacation time. They were also looking at pensions too, but that's a whole nother story. What they did is they all gathered facts, reviewed the policies, looked at what everybody was doing out there, and the whole point was to make recommendations to the legislature on how to fix this, or even the governor. And it was because obviously the rising cost of public employee benefits has been an issue. But I think most of us know that a lot of that, the primary focus on that, besides healthcare, has been pension, not necessarily sick and vacation. So it put public employees under a significant amount of scrutiny. It doesn't help when some of those people get those large boat payouts from their sick time to go out and buy that new boat in retirement. So regardless, all 3 bodies issued reports recommending changes to public employee benefits. It resulted in the 2007 reforms, which are the first ones. It affected 3 different statutes because it affected civil service, non-civil service, and school boards. But this one carved out and was specifically looking at senior level employees. And there was a local finance notice issued on this. It was 2007-28 and 2008-10. They clarified who was the primary focus that this would apply to. What it did is it essentially limited payouts for accumulated sick time to $15,000. But again, this is all senior level employees, not the regular rank and file employees. However, there was a carve out that if the time accumulated prior to the date of this new reform law, if you accrued greater than $15,000, you can keep that accrual and still get that payout, but you could not accrue any greater. So you were restricted. The further thing to happen is if you had a sick leave incentive program to encourage people to not take sick leave, it was no longer permitted. And the only time that you get paid out for sick time was upon retirement. So what was interesting for this group is the law specifically exempted those that held professional licenses or certificates from the new rule. So it was the CFOs, tax collectors. And then, as I said before, the local finance board weighed in on this one and said, hey, look, here's our rules. We're going to provide you some guidance, which they normally do when there's a sweeping law like this that affects all of us. Then came the 2010 reforms. And the changes here are that it applies to everyone, but it was everyone hired after May 21st, 2010. And this is really important to note because that's the trigger for all these new rules. Again, it limited your sick payout to $15,000 unless you had something accrued to that point, or unless you were hired before May, and it's specifically hired before May 21st, 2010, then these new rules didn't apply to you. You still had the ability to accrue based upon your old understandings. Again, the same rules, sick leave programs you could no longer use, which is interesting because after this whole blow up of when the comptroller's office focused on some towns, we realized that when I was in Wharton, we had some payouts that were happening with our public works employees. It was encourage them not to take sick time throughout the year. We would pay them out in the next February for all time that it accrued. I became the bad guy because I had to tell them, hey, by the way, it's in violation of the law. We can't do it except for those of you that were hired before May 21st, 2010. So we essentially created two classes of employees. I was not the most favorite administrator at that time. What's interesting here, though, is the local finance board did not weigh in with additional guidance. So most of us rely on the local finance notices to let us know the new rules that applied to us. They were silent. So it's no reason why many people miss this new update to the law. So I start this off with welcome to the comptroller's office. You get the call, hey, we're here to help you. No, they're not. Problem with the comptroller's office is they tend to sensationalize before they actually show the facts. So in the report, they've had a review of 60 municipalities of their sick leave payments for senior employees under the 2010 rule, under 2007. And then they looked at another 60 municipalities for how they applied everything under the 2010 law. So what they found is that 41 people under the 2007 law were unlawful payments. Under the 2010 law, they found that there were 56 that had violated those new laws. And then they went further to talk about that 36 of the 60 allowed payments that exceeded $15,000. Now, I'll bet you if we went back and reviewed those, you'd find that that wasn't absolutely true, that they probably were missing that cutoff date of the May 21st. They also talked about 48 of the 60 towns made payments for sick leave at times other than retirement. Now, what they may have forgotten is that there may have been a collective bargaining agreement that was specifically called out in the law that would have kept that benefit going. And again, you have to look at the dates. It's very date specific on when you apply items. And 14 of the 60 had sick leave caps that take effect after the new law. Again, fact pattern, you got to review it. 29 of the 60 improperly allow for annual sick leave payments. 17 of the 60 allow for terminal leave or early leave, which is they're considering supplemental compensation for retiring employees. And then 17 provided bonuses and incentives to compensate employees for unused sick leave. You know, they go to talk about in their report that this is supposed to be a savings of overtime and budget savings. If you discourage people from getting payouts or even accumulating their sick time, they take their sick time because they know they're not going to get paid. So that caused the overtime to go up. So to me, it was contrary to their goals in their report. So as a result, they compelled all these towns to come up with a corrective action plan to report back to them with resolutions. So it was a public process of what they were going to do to resolve what their findings were. Recommendations, what they did is they said, hey, look, if we found that this many people out of the 60 samples that we did of municipalities were not doing this properly, then there's probably hundreds of other local municipalities that are in violation of both laws. That was a recommendation. They also made a recommendation to the legislature that, hey, you need to come back and you need to find some way to impose some accountability or some penalties against local governments that are not following these rules. So never let the facts get in the way of a good story. So I said it before, the comptroller's office loves to sensationalize their findings. And you're going to hear it from these two gentlemen today that what they do is they tend to hit the media before the town has a chance to even review the findings and respond to them. What you may not know is there was at least one town that I'm aware of that was removed from this list. So there should have been 61 towns listed. And the reason they weren't is because they spent the time and money to fight the comptroller's office. They fought back and said, hey, look, your findings are inaccurate. So they hired a law firm to come and review everything that they have. And I think when they finalized all their findings, rather than having hundreds of thousands of dollars that were spent incorrectly, they think they found anywhere from like $300 to $600, two minor payments that should not have been paid. It's not bad. We all have oopses in our job, so that was not a bad oops. But again, they fought back, said the comptroller's office, hey, you're full of it. Here's what we found. So interestingly enough, they're not on that list. What many of you may not know is that Kevin Walsh, who is now the comptroller for the state of New Jersey, was previously the one who headed up Fair Share Housing, who spent a significant amount of time suing municipalities for their affordable housing component. So I think a more appropriate review of wasteful spending would be a review of the municipal resources that were spent around that fair share housing lawsuits, at least in my mind. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And Roy or Tom, anybody want to go first? Talk about your experiences?
It's up to you, Roy. I can go. You want to go?
I'll start with some of it, Tom, and then you can interrupt.
Sure.
We have like the same aspect to what they wrote you up on, same as me. All right.
Yep. Go ahead.
So I'm Roy Rigattown, the CFO for multiple municipalities. One of them is Palisades Park. So with that said, the controller's report, it was a compilation of 3 years of interviews with various departments. And we really didn't know exactly where they were zeroing in. One month they would come in and say, let's see some of your sick payouts. Another time they would ask for the BA's contract, police contract, DPW contracts. Another time they would ask specifically for me when I'm there, what I do. And this went on for 36 months of just hammering away, looking to see what we're doing wrong. And what we were looking for is, okay, if we do something wrong, tell us, we'll fix it. That's not what happened. So what the controller's report did basically is chastise the findings of the auditor, the BA, myself. And according to their report, we were doing everything wrong except stealing. So we took exception to some of those findings. And fortunately for us, as a borough, we took those recommendations very seriously, and we corrected many of the fallacies that they said were wrong. We really weren't, but we still did resolutions, affirmative actions that the controller basically was saying we were doing wrongful. One of the aspects was that, let me just read a couple of them. The sick of vacation, for those who are CFOs out there, and this is a great, great roundtable. What the controller did basically is take sick pay that we were paying under a CNA. Now, you old timers out there like me, when this report came out, the controls was actually developed. They actually had seminars at the League of Municipalities. And those old timers out there, if you recall, if they said, the controller themselves, brand new in 2007 and 10, at the league said, if you have a CNA in process, if it's in place, that, and I'm not being a joker, they used the word trumps this statute because there was a phase-in period. So all of these people that they said were getting illegal payments, they were hired prior to 2010. So when you say you have wasteful spending of hundreds of thousands of dollars, that really wasn't true, because as you all know, the IROC was one of the instruments that was used. But what they don't tell you in the report is some of those individuals were at Rutgers University, specifically in class, taking classes, and they weren't meeting the tier 1 criteria because they were part-timers. So with that said, many people that got sick pay, they were hired prior to 2010, and they used the IROC report to say, gotcha. Well, you really didn't get me. You got me in paper. But the reality is those individuals, they were entitled to that sick time. It's in the CNA. It's in the handbook prior to 2010. So at the end of the day, there were a couple people that, yep, as John said eloquently, we missed some of them, but it wasn't in hundreds of thousands of dollars on the sick pay. I'll let Tom go from this point, but it's very important that 58 out of 61 towns were just announced again, not conforming to the sick pay buyouts. The reason that we even had sick pay in the previous administration is back in the 2000s, we couldn't get people to work. So one of the incentives is, you know what? Or pay for that matter. So one of the incentives was, well, if you don't take sick pay and you work the whole year and you take a couple days off, but you are entitled to 14 days, 15 days sick, we want you to come to work. We will pay you that money for coming to work. Tom, you want to go from there?
Yeah, sure. Similar, Moorestown had these policies in place prior to the laws. We actually had ordinances done. We had contracts in place back in 2000. And the reason we put these in place for sick time is the abuse we had, as John touched on earlier. We're a civil service town, so everybody gets 15 sick days. Well, all the blue collar employees, police, public works were using those days. So the cost factor, I mean, just simple dollars alone, just for the police department, the patrol division, we're spending 250,000 less in just simple not index dollars now for overtime than we were back then, because we did it as an incentive. So when I put the policy in place, and by the way, a lot of towns at the time had these policies. They were, and a lot of towns currently have them now, much more than the 60 they're speaking about. But we indexed it. We said, okay, if you use 0 days, you could sell 10 days back. And basically it went down to 3 days. Once you use 3 days, you couldn't sell any back. And you always had to have a minimum of 30 days on the books before you could start selling back. And it was very good. In our overtime, we saved big time on overtime and still do. And that's why our council still supports these policies. So, we felt the same way. When this law first came into place, there were a lot of towns that, you had police chiefs going out with $300,000 of sick leave pay. And what was happening, that obviously, the newspapers were playing that up around the same time the study was being done. And I think we all agree that, $300,000 sick pay, does nothing to help the town at all. That, that is excessive. But having an incentive to have employees work, save on overtime, and also, by the way, we have for the size of our town, we have a pretty low number of employees. And I think that's because of that policy. Because if you think about it, if everybody took their time, then you may have to have an extra employee, or at least some part-timers, to come in and help cover those offices. Because we have offices that are staged by like 2 people, maybe 3 people. So, if everybody started using their time, now, of course, when you talk to the state, they're like, well, people aren't, it's only for sick time. Well, we live in reality down here, and the employees will take those. As when we first, Moorestown was selected because they needed a South Jersey town. They were doing a lot of this up in North Jersey. And as John mentioned earlier, we were on the list of the fair share housing. We were a big target. And somehow we got selected because they said they needed somebody from North Jersey. So they sent us a survey. We completed the survey, and next thing you know, that survey must have gone out to newspapers, because the newspapers started doing Oprah requests for all of our employees and our pays. And the bottom line was, it was less than $30,000 employees that were after the May 21st, 2010. But again, our policy, similar to what Roy was saying, our policies were in place long before these laws went into place. And we kind of took the reading along with, attorney and stuff, that you couldn't create anything new. I actually spoke to Mark Pfeiffer, who was part of the legislation at the time and wrote the local finance notice. And he said that those sick leave buyback policies weren't even envisioned. They didn't even know about them. So it wasn't part of what they were doing. And Mark, thought that they never envisioned people doing policies to get around the law. And I said, well, Mark, these weren't to get around the law. These were in place long before the law was there. And we felt that it was a good thing. And again, our council still does see the benefit of it because again, we feel that we're able to prove that we've saved a lot on overtime and also be able to have less personnel. On the vacation side of it, there's also the vacation component of it. And, you know, we've always had in place where you can only have the prior year plus your current year. They wrote us up for the vacation being in violation because we have language in there that leaves it up to where Faulkner town, so township manager, council format. And if there was something that came up, the manager had the ability that if for some reason, you know, again, being a kind of a medium-sized town, if you had a major crime, say the last 2 weeks of December, but you know, your detective division is taking off during that time, but you got to cancel their vacation. The manager had the ability to say, okay, we'll let you take that, you know, but you got to use those days into the next year through April. That's what they wrote us up. They said only the governor can do it during the state of emergency. I understand that's what it says, but it's kind of ridiculous because just, you know, if you're a shore town, you know, you got a good chance during a hurricane to get a state of emergency. But, you know, if you're an inlet town and you have something else, other floodings or other something that impacts just your town, you would think that the manager would have that latitude. But you know, that one we kind of agreed, said, okay, fine, we'll take that language out. We actually haven't had to use it, but we still got written up for it. Just going back to sick again, real quick. Kind of lost what my point was on that. The where they were trying to hit us on that. Well, I'll turn it back over to you for a second, Roy, so I get my train of thought back.
Sure. So at the end of the day, when we talk about sick payouts, the key here for everyone to take away, as per the controller, is if you're hired prior to the 2010 May 21st, as long as you have it in a handbook, all the ordinances and resolutions and CNAs in place, again, our council, we basically say you can have that sick payouts, of course, up to the 15,000 rule, which we all adhere to. There were other aspects to the controls report, and one had to do with a reimbursement of a $68,000 check. We took exception to that because the check was issued erroneously. The review, it was a voluminous reimbursement for an employee who had all resolutions in place to get the reimbursement. But what the controller didn't realize is that check was voided. They took a voided check, an actual purchase order that was processed, it was voided. So when I was interviewed from the control saying, well, you made a mistake, we got you, again, the gotcha, I said, no, that check was voided. Well, you voided it because you knew we were on an investigation. I said, how do I void a check if it was issued in December? I voided it in March, and you guys knock on the door shortly afterwards. Of course it was voided, but they put it in the report and it was a voided check. Again, gotcha. They also report about internal controls. Well, to my knowledge, again, they were talking about using stamps on purchase orders. For everybody out there, if you're a multiple employee, watch yourselves, because they made me a villain that I had 4 or 5 towns working, but they didn't tell you 2 of the towns I was a volunteer firefighter from 1975 onward, and I was also an inspector. They didn't tell you, though, that there were multiple different lookings as to how I do my job. They didn't tell you that Saturday, Sundays, just like Tom and everyone else out there, we work. You know, we don't punch in if we're part-time. They took exception to that. They all agreed that I was working at least 10 hours a week in person. I was as needed basis since 1991. But again, there was criticism because we weren't following different guidelines. We took exception to that, obviously. So make sure that if you have a purchase order, another thing you should know, don't ever use a rubber stamp. make sure you sign that purchase order live, especially if you're a part-timer, because that's a no-no, because you're illegally doing payments according to the controller's report. What else did we have here?
Hey, Roy, before you go,
Sorry,
I
go
got
ahead.
one question that was popped up in the room. I'll throw it out to you guys. And does anybody know why employees holding licenses were exempt in these laws? It just seems like it was thrown in, but never expanded on.
Don't.
Yeah, that was in 2007. There were 10 positions. I don't know why. I think just because we're exempted by other parts of statute, so I'm not really sure. Because the original law dealt with senior, your department heads and like managers or administrators. I'm not sure, John. Do you know why?
I don't.
And not that we're upset about it, but it's that was I guess because we're protected by other areas. But back with the sick, one of the things as Roy's talking about, the office of controller, that they really didn't look at stuff to see whether something's a savings or not. They were running, it's more was a gotcha. It wasn't let's share, let's get together, let's talk. Why don't we reach out to town, see what's going on? It was, right to the newspaper type stuff. But it didn't cover that Moorestown has actually, a more strict sellback. I mean, our policies, you can sell back $20 a day per day for the first $149, and then it kind of goes to a graduated schedule that basically you need like 300 days on the books before you can reach the 15,000. The state law allows you to do, basically 50% of the days at the pay, which is our police were able to negotiate that a while ago because of the state law, and that basically took them from when they normally would have to have 30 days to 30 days on the books. So now they basically will take their sick unless those that are following the policy to get the annual buyback. But again, our council felt that they were really good policies. The conclusion of the report said that towns were wasting money or commencing to waste money. And again, I could prove that we've saved a lot of money just on overtime and also reduced personnel. Roy, one of the things I want to ask you is you had mentioned that you still do the pay for those under May of 2010, but you mentioned the 15,000 cap. Are you saying you still hold the 15,000 cap total?
Yes, so we do have employees hired prior to 2007, actually, but we use the window from 7 to 10. So what I'm doing now is I am keeping an actual calculation, tabulation from 2010 forward, that those individuals, they clearly are entitled to the 2-week buyback, but I'm also keeping a long-term amount on a spreadsheet. So when someone hits that $15,000 mark, which probably will never happen, but should that happen, we would stop at that $15,000. No one is going to get over $15,000 over their career for buybacks for sick
Over
time.
the career, okay.
Yeah.
And that's good. The other thing is that this is really, I mean, the league has had opinions on this. We worked with our attorneys on this. When we submit our budget, we actually have a separate line item called sick sellback, and it's passed every year with the budget. I did check with the division, and division wasn't really tackling this at all. And again, as I spoke earlier, the drafter of the local finance notice that didn't even know this was going on. So there's just it was kind of tough the way they come out there, because we see benefits of the program, for that reason. So I'm not sure how others experiences anybody else had, but we thought we were saving real money there. So.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I just want to jump in here and do a poll quickly relating to your presentation. I'm gonna go ahead and launch the first question. So as a reminder for attendees, please make sure you answer the polling questions for credit. This one is, has your government reviewed its bargaining agreements or contracts for compliance with the relevant statutes for compensatory time? And if you have any problems answering or for whatever reason can't, just send me a message. I'll leave that up for another few seconds. right. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share the results. So it looks like most people did have to some extent. Thank you.
All right, and the other thing we were doing is, all the writing of these we felt were kind of unclear in addressing those annual payouts. Certainly 15,000 cap was definitive. The 2 years, the previous plus your current year of vacation was obvious. There's been 2 perk decisions that kind of touched around the area, but haven't definitively addressed those issues. We felt that once we stopped that, our police were going to file grievances against us for sure, and our other unions. We didn't want to be the ones being the test ones, having to spend our money to fight that. We were hoping others would have done that already. But we're really hoping that legislation, clears it up. We still hold that it's still not, it's unsettled. And even as the league had articles on it themselves, they called it the same thing. It's unsettled law, as far as the definitive nature of that. That's how we feel. That's how we responded back to the Office of State Controller, that we're just hoping that something comes down that will definitively address this.
So another aspect with the controllers, in general, they did pick up different aspects that we were on the verge and not in compliance with. So it wasn't all that the controllers said that we weren't in agreement with. The biggest issue that I found with the controller themselves, and then I'll go into some more details, is just like Division of Local Government Services, whether it be the SCI or any of the other investigative agencies, normally they come to the town and they'll ask different questions. And most of the time, unless you're an idiot, you're going to comply. And we were in complete compliance with the OSC, but they never gave us an opportunity to correct. Instead, this is where I had the problem with the controller. You found something, you know what? You're absolutely right. We'll fix it. No, you had to put in the report. We didn't do X, Y, and Z. All right, but let us fix it, come back, and then take a look. That's the gotcha that their terms, when we talk about CFOs in the industry, when you talk about the OSC, oh, they're there to get you. It should not be a way for us to do our living, to work, to manage the boroughs. We have enough to do, as you all out there know, whether it be working on a payroll issue, a purchasing issue, and we always forget also human resource issues. There's a lot to do. But with that being said, let me go through a couple other aspects to the controller's report. Some of it does take some credibility. But again, at the end of the day, that credibility is basically thrown out because you published something, you didn't let us fix it. Give us some time. So let's see. Purchase orders. So we do purchase orders and we issue purchase orders. As part-timers, many of you out there are, by the way, it's not just me. I found that out. 1,100 people out there have multiple towns and multiple incomes. Unfortunately, targeted me for whatever reason. But with that being said, when it comes to purchase orders, one of the aspects was that I did allow a stamp for a purchase order. What the controller's report didn't tell you is, though, I was on the phone. They would tell me what it was about my staff. And then, of course, I would go there and then I would sign the purchase order later on. Yeah, I missed a couple with the rubber stamp. So that was a finding because, quote unquote, the CFO wasn't doing their job. So those purchasing agents out there, make sure you're signing all the documents, and you also should be doing the backup, the review for all of the arithmetic as well. because that was one of the internal controls that supposedly we did not have in place. Unfortunately, I do have excellent staff, and I don't add up every purchase order, the backup. We were criticized because I'm supposed to do that as CFO as well. We didn't agree with that. Purchase gas cards. So the borough has gas cards, and the reason for the gas cards is because our, I don't want to mention names. So one of our, I'll just say our DPW head, who's licensed, lives out of town. He gets a car allowance by going to and from. And the reason for that is because if there's a sewer break, a collapse, something with DPW, he travels from his home to the borough with his vehicle. So we didn't think that was an awful issue. It's in his CNA. Again, for all you legal people out there, it is in a contractual negotiated agreement. He gets a card, and he also gets to fill up. The controller says that's double dipping. We didn't see it that way, but because we want to adhere to law, we took that away. Even though it's still in the CNA, we never reimbursed the individuals, there's others involved, for gas mileage, and as well as having a gas card as well. The gas is great, but wear and tear is where we thought we were doing good for the employee and saving taxpayers money, because now we have to buy a whole fleet of cars for our part-timers and full-timers, because they're not going to use their car for business to go and check if there's a problem with a road, a garbage can, whatever it may be. That's a DPW function. So unfortunately for us, we have to go buy 5 or 6 vehicles now instead of reimbursing $350 a month for gas. Tom?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Yeah, there's that additional cost we're talking about. And we actually asked the acting director of the Office of State Controller to speak at our finance conference, CFO conference last year. And he was gracious enough to come down and speak. And I mentioned talking offhand to him, I told him of our instance, how we feel that we're saving all this money and how we feel this without additional costs. If we did that, and the response was just, that's the unintended consequences of the legislature's passing laws. So I didn't, again, I thought they're trying to look for waste and help towns to cut costs. Some of these inadvertently are going to increase costs, because you're right. Employees shouldn't have to use their own vehicle for work, especially talking about insurance and incidents and stuff, because they would have to bear, if there were any accidents or anything, they would have to bear that responsibility on their vehicle. So again, these are those unintended consequences of some of the stuff.
And a major consequence is, like for myself, although I've never, ever put in any reimbursement ever in my life of 30, 40 years in the business, I was chastised under the JIF, the Joint Insurance Fund, because I was taking my vehicle, making deposits to the bank. I'm not supposed to do that according to JIF, because I'm supposed to use a borough vehicle on borough time under, forgive me for those out there in the JIF, maybe you could chime in, but clearly the police officer is supposed to come with me when I make my deposits to the bank. And it was for 2 reasons. One was safety, but now because of the reimbursements of the gas and using my own vehicle, I found myself in basically in violation of the JIF rules and regulations, because I was using my own vehicle for deposits. So you may want to watch and be very careful out there. Another takeaway today is, if you're making the deposits, which I still do to this day, I take it on my own fruition, my own vehicle, because I want to get that money in the bank at 345. I want to get that interest. Now we're up to about 3-4%, maybe even higher. you have to be careful that you are covered under the joint insurance fund. God forbid you're in an accident. I think that's something that's a takeaway. Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I know the insurance goes with the vehicle. I'm not sure of any joint insurance fund. I'm associated with the joint insurance funds. Maybe it's one of the policies with your particular joint insurance fund, but I take the bank the deposits in my own vehicle and don't have an issue. I don't have a police officer or anything. So there's no requirement of that part of it. But if something does happen in your vehicle, the insurance does have to go through your insurance, not the town's, because insurance follows the vehicle. So that part would not, be a good experience.
Yep. Some of the procedures that we did put in place. So we did respond to the controller's report in detail 2 months later, and we did take affirmative action. And one of the aspects of taking action was resolutions, amendments to the CNAs that we had to basically supply to the controls report. And I only wish the controller's report would have given us 60, 90, 120 days to correct. So there wasn't this totality of corruption and wasteful spending that just didn't happen. And if there's a takeaway for the controller, if he was on today, is give us some time to correct. If you find something, we will fix it if it's in contravention to the law. We as CFOs, we work on ethics first. And then of course, our ethics follow rules and regulations, and we try to do everything right. And with that being said, when it came to purchase orders and signatures, we revamped the whole department. We put up a whole new policy and procedure through a resolution that now whoever gets hired in my office, they have to read the policy procedures and they sign off on it. That was one of the recommendations. It's not a bad recommendation, but we do that. We did a resolution, no more gas allowance. We terminated that as per the controls report in the form of a resolution. And the borough attorney as well, reviewing with labor attorney to make sure that those CNAs are now amended. I don't think it's right. The people are using still their vehicles, their wear and tear. And because of our dilemma now, as you all know, coming next year, we did buy a couple vehicles that, in my opinion, were wasteful spending. Instead of spending $3,600 a year for gas, I had to come up with $22,000 up front to buy the vehicle for some of our employees, as per the controller's report. So it's not always gotcha and we're doing everything wrong. Tom, anything before I continue? Jon Rheinhardt?
Yeah, it's good if I take the mute off. No, keep going.
All right. Let's see.
Roy, just to add, that's exactly my point when I was speaking to Kevin Walsh. Was it'd be great if they could work with us if they find instances that are occurring with towns. It'd be much better to work with us. Instead of having the media, those gotcha moments where everything's out in the newspaper as if we're wasting money and stuff like that, or intentional. A lot of times, these are policies that have been in place forever. If something changes and we got to change them, that's fine. Just work with us. It's not like something's intentionally being done to thwart. And again, a lot of these things we believe are good policies that have been saving our residents a lot of money.
Problem is they like the gotcha. They thrive on that sensationalism and putting it through the media first. They always have.
Yeah, it's just wrong, especially when you talk about different aspects to the CFO and their responsibilities and what they're responsible for. Let me continue on a couple of other resolutions that we did put in place. The actual CNAs, they said they had to be reviewed by the borough attorney. Again, One of the aspects that was a big argument we had with the controller's offices, we were doing everything wrong. We were issuing checks for gas reimbursements. We were doing all of these different aspects. But what the controller failed to recognize were that wasn't all wrong. We had the signed CNAs in place. The purchase orders went through the bills list. The mayor and councils, we still had to have signatures on the original POs from the council before it went on to a bills list. There wasn't one payment they could find, not one, that did not go through the mayor and council on a bills list. So that was one of my arguments. You're saying we're doing everything wrong, but guess what? If it's reviewed by the attorney, it's reviewed by the council, what are you saying? We're not putting fictitious purchase orders before the council's face for them to sign. That was an aspect again. So we were doing something right there because you couldn't find double payments. You tried, couldn't find any. So again, you're going back to the gotcha. They were looking so damn hard to find fault, whether it was with the finance department, whether it be with the BA, the DPW head, the CFO. They were there on a witch hunt to say, hey, your auditor missed this, division missed this. And we kept saying, no, 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 no. So anyway, because we are, and I am a very ethical individual, we complied with every aspect to what they wanted done, the OSC. Again, after the fact that you embroiled the media, you embroiled the borough that, oh, there's wasteful spending. It's almost to a verge of corruption, although they never said that word. Boy, us in this business, though, if I read that with another, it says, what the hell is that guy doing? He's never there. So with that, we reviewed all contracts and contracts for the employees. They're reviewed every time there is a new one that has to be voted upon. Tom, I'll let you get back on, but real quick. So our contracts went back to 1988. They're usually 3-year contracts. And I could tell you, we went back to 88, and we always reimbursed for gas. We always had these policies in place. The sick buyout was always in place the 2 weeks. And again, I'm going back to Tom, because just like in Palisades Park, back in the 90s, we couldn't get employees to come to the borough. And if we did, we didn't pay much. So one of the incentives was, if we did get somebody to work in accounts payable, payroll, or even in finance, we wanted to keep them. One of the benefits is, well, you know what? Again, I'm rehashing, but you get those 10 days. And it was in the CNAs. And that was always an argument, even 2007 and 10. And now as I'm speaking to everyone, I do recall it was the 2011 League of Municipalities where there was talk specifically with the CNAs. And it was the same time that the PBA started screaming about Chapter 78, it's illegal, we're garnishing checks, et cetera, et cetera. But again, I'm going back to that time frame. It was a very tumultuous attack on public employees and police officers and firefighters in that infamous 2012 era. Tom?
Oh, yeah. Another thing, if you think about the Office of State Controller was doing, is they were going after towns that were not in a state health benefit plan, trying to force them into it. And look where that turned out to be right now for those towns. You know, I'm kind of curious to see that. I mean, I know there's a lot more than 60 towns out there, and you know, that have these kind of policies out there. Are there any questions from anybody, or is out there? Have you guys received any questions, or it's kind of a roundtable, try to get some conversation going on it?
No, there was a comment that a gas card may be double dipping, but it may be taxable for the employee as well.
Right.
Did I say may or may not be? It may not be double dipping.
Yeah. But the fact that they now had to buy a fleet of vehicles is for real. It's is a real
Yeah,
impact.
$80,000, Tom, $80,000. So I figured, Reinhardt, you're pretty good with the numbers. It'll take many, many a year at $3,600 to get up to 80 grand.
Want the answer?
Lots.
Yeah, and so, but the you know, we were lucky again when you read about your town being in the paper, it's a shock. Of course, everybody you know starts sending, hey, you know, what's going on here? I was lucky, fortunate that we had a council, you know, been here a long time. You know, they were supportive with that stuff, and again, they really support the policy, and they're hoping, and you know, that there'll be some more clarification. And again, I'm surprised there hasn't been any definitive challenge with respect to some of the unions out there. We did reach out to the unions, you know, to get their impact input on it, and the CWA provided some information that was actually more supportive in our area. But we haven't seen anything where anybody's really definitively said, you know, they haven't filed a suit against the town now, you know, for taking it away from them. At least I'm not aware of any. John, you or Roy aware of any?
No, none.
Nope, none. Well, again, like I said, for us, we weren't in full compliance. Basically, we took everything away that were perks, if you will, that according to the controller was illegal. We stopped that right away. Again,
When you took it away from your union employees, what did they do?
angry, very angry, and they're not doing the job. So what happens now is there's a delay response. There's literally a sewer break or whatever at midnight. Guess what? You're going to have to wait now till 5, 6 in the morning, unless, of course, it's imminent danger. And of course, somebody will come out through the police department. But now a normal break or a normal maintenance it's going to take a little more time. You got to do it for free.
So there's one more kind of comment that came up in the question box, and maybe Katie, I don't know how you could shift on the fly for this, but somebody's suggesting that we put a poll out to see sick time for employees hired paid to the 2010 cutoff date. Curious how many towns are still making annual payouts or payments. So I don't know if you could put something like that together.
Yes, I will put that polling question in. In the meantime,
yeah.
before I launch that, let me just do the second question and then I'll
Sure.
do that one before we finish.
Thank you, Katie.
Next question is, let me launch it. Do you believe that you are in compliance with the relevant statutes? And then I'll put that one in to launch that next. Right. Okay. Share those. All right, and then let's see. Okay, so then this one is in relation to that question. Are you still making annual payouts for sick time employees hired prior to the 2010 cutoff date? That choice 3 is a mistake, so you could just choose yes or no. And then I'll share these and we can talk a little depending on what you guys think. Give it another minute. Right. All right, so it's almost a 50-50 split.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things, once we do take this away, I worry we're gonna have that reaction of people sicking out, using their sick time. And, you know, and again, we felt at the time when we put this in place, we had collusion amongst the police, couldn't prove it. But you know, I'll take a sick out, I'll call out sick on my shift and you have to come in on 12 hours and replace me, you know, type thing. And it was ringing up a lot of money, big time. Like I said, you know, I look back, you know, to over 20 years ago, and you know, we're spending 250,000, over 250,000 more than we're spending now on overtime. So if you index that, it'd be a hell of a lot more money right now with their pay rate. And that was just a patrol division.
So Tom, Roy, John, there were several people that said they didn't know if they were in compliance based on the prior poll question. Did you guys have any suggestions or recommendations for them?
So, Bud, if you want, I can forward to you the comptroller's report so you can distribute it to everybody. It's pretty clear in there. And then it's even clearer if you read the law. You know, the comptroller at some point is paraphrasing a little bit. When I know when we found out, so I know when Roy got hit, I'm reading the paper going, oh my gosh, you know what? I think I'm in violation. That's how I realized. And that's why I said, I think the 2007 was done okay by LFB. 2010 was just glossed over, which normally is what we use to prompt us to go look at what we're doing. You know, and so I think if anybody's still in violation, it's innocent. But we had just finished negotiating a contract with Public Works, had wrapped it up. It's a couple of months later and I go, oh my gosh, guess what? That provision is no longer legal. They had a hissy fit, accused me of negotiating in bad faith. I said, it had nothing to do with that. I said, I wasn't aware of the law. Look at the article. That's what made me look at it. So I'm sure there's some people out there that are still in violation and don't realize it.
Hey, John, just go
Yes.
to July 1st, 2022. 58 towns within the last 6 months are in still violation. Right?
Yeah.
According to the controller, they are.
So should they
and
undertake this themselves? Should they hire labor counsel, their town attorney?
It's not hard to figure out, but if they read what the rules say, and it's in the presentation, you know, that you need to figure out when they were hired. I would go back to the first 2 local finance notices to be the launching point. And then from there, you just move forward as to who it applies to.
Yeah.
You are splitting hairs. It's like going through chapter 78 again. You got to figure out how many years they had in at what point, whether they're entitled to not have to pay in retirement or do pay. And that's,
Take it from the 2 poster boys right here. If you were hired after May 21st, 2010, you better not be getting sick pay.
And the May 21st is a little more clear, but again, this is still, even as the league said, it's not settled. It's unclear. You get different attorneys to argue on both sides of anything. But the fact that, you know, we felt that our policies were in place, they were not created after the law to circumvent the law. They were in all the contracts beforehand. And, you know, we just felt it was helping. That's where we stand. So.
I don't know if Katie wants to do another polling question. I just sent it to you, John, and Katie, but I just sent the comptroller's report. If everybody wants it mailed out.
I can definitely include that in the follow-up too. And we're good
Yeah.
on polls. We did all 3, so thank you.
Come on, what's one more? Anything else for the good of the order? Any questions? Everybody's quiet. Okay. John, do you want to do a couple-minute break or do you want to just roll right into Judy?
If Judy's ready, why don't we just roll right in? There was one more question that came up just as you were speaking. If an employee was hired prior to May 2010, this will be okay. But is considering a department head, i.e. chief, are they prohibited from receiving an annual payout?
Yes, because I think it was the 2007 law targeted upper management.
I don't think a chief is one of the exempt employees,
No.
correct?
No, and they only carved out that it was your rank and file employees. Still, if they had that benefit before, they didn't want to take it away. So upper management lost everything.
Well, the certified health officers, tax assessors, tax collectors, municipal planner, chief financial officer, registered municipal clerk, construction code official, and licensed uniform subcode inspectors, qualified purchase agent, and certified public works managers are the exempt ones in the 2007 law.
All right, I think we got all the questions answered. I know Judy's chomping at the bit to start talking to us. All right. Yeah, before you go, though, I want to thank Roy and Tom for joining us today. Katie, I don't know if they're registered as participants, but I know they both would benefit from getting the credits when we're done.
Sure, I will, yeah, I'll make sure they're on the list of attendees too.
Great. And for those tax collectors, I know Bud was going to amend the request for CEUs to ask for the tax collector credit for Judy's session, which is going to be next.
Yep, perfect.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Roy.
Very good. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
So with that, Judy agreed to speak today on the tax collection component of our CFO roundtable. So for those of you that don't know Judy, she is a CTC. She currently works in Mine Hill and Kinnelon Borough. I asked her to come up to Kinnelon many years ago as a favor just to help Band-Aid operations. And how long has that been now, Judy?
Oh, 9 years.
She's still there. So Judy has been a tax collector in New Jersey for approximately 20 years. She also had the honor of working in Mendham Borough as an interim tax collector, Franklin Borough, and also in Peapack Gladstone. So she gets to travel the world when she does her collecting. So with that, we're going to give it over to you, Judy.
Okay. Now, you have to bear with me for a second while I get you my presentation here. And it helps if I'm at the beginning instead of at the middle. Sorry, I'm using somebody else's computer here.
No worries. We'll bear with you.
Hang on a second, because there you go. Now I can see. Oh, yeah. No, yes. Yeah. Okay, can everybody see that? Or now? Okay, so we're going to talk about the impact of the COVID regulations on utility billing. The state mandates that between March 9th of 2022 to March 15th, 2020 to March 15th of 2022, that collectors are not allowed to collect interest on any utility associated with a home. The utilities that are impacted are not only municipal utilities, but private utilities were impacted as well. New Jersey American Water was impacted greatly by this. And then there were compliance issues that normally we would use for collection that we were not allowed to use. There was mandated payment plan offers that we had to make to the property owners, and the state has opened or had opened assistance programs for people, homeowners to apply to. So any interest that was due, any bills that were due prior to March 9th have interest calculated through March 9th, and then the interest calculation stops. If it remained open on March 15th of 2022, you could pick the interest up again, okay? The interest that would have been charged has to be absorbed by the utility. If you had something open from 2020, normally we would have put it into tax lien sale. and written it off the books to get the money into the utilities coffers. Unfortunately, because of the COVID regulations, we were not able to do that. The utilities that were impacted were water, sewer, electric, and some towns provide internet or web-based services to the homeowners. Those certainly could not be shut off because, as we all know, a majority of the schools were closed and all the kids were learning from home. Again, shutoffs were not permitted during the COVID period. The state guidelines for shutoffs subsequent to the COVID period are treacherous at best. You have to provide information on shutoffs as well as the programs that the state are offering to property owners. And we had to offer to property owners payment plans through the state of New Jersey, through the municipality, but the requirement was through the state. So the state had two programs that people could apply for, and I love acronyms. So it was the LAWAP and the LEHIP. So one of them covered water and the other one covers energy. So the water assistance program was new for COVID. It covers only up to $1,500 per household. And both of these programs are income-based. The low-income heating energy assistance program has been around for a really long time. It is income-based, and the cap of that program, as far as the payout is concerned, is based on the income of the household. So by now, these plans should have been applied for. People had until July 15th of 2022 to apply for the programs. There were 60 days was the program window for telling people that they either received the program or they did not receive the program. The state of New Jersey notified the utility if somebody was accepted into the program. However, we never were notified by the state how much we would be receiving from them as far as the particular person in the program. And certainly we have not been paid out by the state as of yet. If somebody applied to the state for one of the programs and the person was denied the program, they have 7 days to appeal the state's decision, and then it could take another 30 days after their appeal for the final outcome. So if they send it out and then if they get their news that they are declined, and then they appeal, and then the state reviews their appeal, we're talking another 45 days. So right about now is when everybody should be settled out. So we should know, and the homeowners should know, whether they were accepted into the program, denied the program, or their status of the program is failed and they are required to pay the utility for their open balances. So charges that accrue prior to March 15th, 2022 are mandated by state law into a payment program. We had to offer each homeowner about the availability of the plan. That notification had to be individually sent to each affected home. It had to also be posted on our website and at the collector's office in town hall. There was a mandatory 12-month duration for the program. So they would have 12 months under our program to pay the utility. Okay, that payment plan does not require governing body approval. The plan to the homeowner could be less than 12 months, but in order to do that, the utility would have to forgive at least 50% of the interest. So a couple of slides from now, you're going to want to remember that that 50% interest is what we would have to waive. We could also offer homeowners a payment plan between 12 and 5 years. That payment plan requires governing body approval, and that approval could be either a blanket plan that everybody who is affected by COVID and paying out their utilities can be covered under it, or it could be done on a case-by-case basis. So this payment plan is subject to NJSA 54-519, which requires if the payment plan is on a property, that the plan payments are on a timely basis, and that other things that are due to the municipality are kept current. So their property taxes, whatever other utility the town might collect for, trash, anything has to be current. And if either of those things, either the payment plan or an outside due to the municipality falls 30 days past due, then the payment plan is null and void. If the property owner does not pay scheduled amount within 30 days, got ahead of myself, then the payment plan is void and enforcement begins. If a property owner did not respond to our notification of the availability of a payment plan, or did not agree to a payment plan and is still sitting on their hands because they think for some reason the money is going to be forgotten or forgiven, they're out of luck, we begin enforcement immediately. The utility provider has to, as part of tax sale law, certify to the tax collector the outstanding balances. This year in particular, that's going to be a very important piece. Normally, the utility would just give the tax collector an amount with interest through the tax sale date, and that's what the tax collector would put into tax lien sale. Now, this is going to be important from the point of view of the utility provider will need to provide to the tax collector not only the outstanding balance, but when those balances were due. Some people are sitting on their books with 2019 balances open because after 2020, when they normally would have enforced it in a standard tax sale, the window for the opportunity to do that was closed because the COVID regulations said that anything that was due cannot be collected and enforced until after March 15th of 2022. So we could not sell anything that was utility except for sewer, because they didn't sneak sewer into their plan until actually January of this year, when the original thing came down from Governor Murphy. It did not include sewers. In January of 2022, when the executive order was extended, the extension of his executive order did include the sewers, but that was not in prior information. Okay. Any due amounts go into the tax lien sale. So this is what I was talking about as far as looking at the numbers that are going into tax lien sale. And on the right-hand side, if you were to offer somebody a program that was less than a year to pay back to the municipality, that $56 would become $28, and that's what you would be collecting. So If you look over to the left, what you normally would collect in interest, $138, the municipality is losing $100. Now, this is on a water account. That's not much money, you say. If somebody has an electric bill that's outstanding and you add a 0 to the end of those things, that's a lot of money. So I have up in Kinnelon somebody who is owing the electric company, because they use Butler Electric, about $5,000 from prior years that the electric company was not allowed to enforce collection on. So that's the amount that is going to tax sale is a very great amount. So when we take stuff to tax sale, we line everything up as far as when it was due. And for the first $1,500 of that, we charge 8% interest. And then we go and we charge 18% interest on everything that is below that. Normally what happens is the certification comes into the tax collector, and whatever utility is kind of just attached onto what we have for property taxes. Now, with the dates coming in that were original due dates from the utilities, we have to really take a look at what is at 8% and then what is at 18%. And the reason that this becomes a manual process at this point in time for us tax collectors is because most software systems are not able to calculate that. They pull in what is given from the utility and they pull that in as a number. They don't pull that in as a date set. So the 8 and 18 equation is put off by that. So if you're certified from your electric utility that someone owes you $5,000, that would all be at 18%, but I can't put it at 18%. It has to go to the start at 8%. So the utility is going to get back less money than they normally would if I was selling a lien at 18%, because that's usually tacked on to the end, and it's not getting tacked on to the end now, it's getting tacked on to the beginning. So anything that was due prior to March 15th of 2022 has to have interest run from March 15th to the date of sale, unless they have 2019 open as well. And then they have to do 2019 to March 9th of 2020. And then the remainder, they have to add all the way up and then charge interest from March 15th of 2022 to the date of the tax lien sale.
Hey, Judy, I'm just going to jump in and do a poll quickly.
Okay, no worries.
Okay, so I'm going to launch this question. The question is, has your municipality noticed a significant difference in your utility billing since the COVID-19 pandemic? And I'll give it a few seconds and then share the results. Give it another minute. Okay. So it looks like most people said no, a bit of a mixed bag here. Thanks, Judy. I'll jump in one more time before you're done and do the second one. Thanks.
No worries. Okay, so the payment plan that we have to offer a homeowner is in addition to the payment plan that might be already on a property. Tax collectors out there know that properties and homeowners are allowed one payment plan per the life cycle of the property. And since property doesn't really die, if they only have one payment plan going, we have to provide them with another payment plan because of the exigent circumstances of COVID-19. There's a lot of follow-up that needs to be done in the collector's office as far as making sure that people on the payment plans are sticking with the payment plans. We also have to go after the state of New Jersey for the funds that they are supposed to be providing to the towns. So the state has not, I've heard from the state that I'm going to receive X number of dollars for property A and B, but I have not seen those funds come in from the state of New Jersey as of yet. And these were people who applied for the plan through the state of New Jersey's assistance program back in March or April. So we found out right away that they would qualify, but we have not seen any funding from the state as far as payments on their stuff is concerned. And then that's pretty much it. I didn't know if anybody had any questions, but my little slide thing doesn't want to move, so. There you go.
You can stop sharing if that's it.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
one question. Let me see. Nope, that's not a question, actually. Anybody have any questions about that?
Then launch the second poll, and it might, it's about the state assistance program, so maybe we'll have some discussion based off that. So the next question is, did your municipality have any experience with the state assistance programs? And I'll leave it open for a couple seconds. Right. So it looks like most did not, but there are a couple in here that have.
I will say about the state assistance program is that your municipality, each individual municipality had to agree to the terms of the state program for the water. Like I said, the water program was something new that they did with the COVID funding that they received from the federal government. So they put that assistance plan out there for that. And towns had to opt in. It wasn't everybody's automatically included. So there might be some towns that did not opt into the program. There was not really a big downside to towns at the beginning of our opting in, but now we see that financing from the state is moving very slowly. So that's not a fun thing for utilities that are looking to get back funds that are due to them, especially those ones from 2019.
Gotta love that the state writes rules giving away other people's money and not their own.
Welcome to New Jersey. And that's pretty much what I got.
Thanks, Judy. I don't see more questions. I do have an update for everybody on a Chapter 78 issue, because we all seem to deal with that, where the cops and all the unions seem to think that Chapter 78 sunsetted. They misinterpret that it had to be phased in and interpret that as a sunsetting when it truly was not. So there's a recent decision that just came out. It was a case in Myers versus State Health Benefits Commission. It involved a state trooper who had only 17 years and 9 months of service credit on June 28, 2011. And if you remember right, the Chapter 78 trigger was that June 28, 2011, which is when Chapter 78 took effect. He did not have the 20 years of service credit he needed to be exempt from Chapter 78 upon retirement. After a subsequent change in the law, he decided to purchase his prior military service credit back, which allowed him to retire in 2013 with over 25 years of service when he purchased his time, when the purchase time was added. State Health Benefits originally mistakenly told him that he was exempt from Chapter 78 contributions. They apparently had assumed that the 20 years of service had been met because of his buyback. But in 2017, State Health Benefits realized their mistake and started charging the Chapter 78 contributions. Of course, he sued on the estoppel theory. The appellate division has rejected his argument. So, which is interesting because it strikes down all those people that say that it's sunset. It said one critical passage has to do with the importance of the June 28, 2011 date. The petitioner had a little over 17 years of creditable service time as an employee of the state police as of June 20, 2011. By the plain language of Chapter 78, only public employees with 20 or more years of service as of the date were exempt from the provisions, which would require mandatory health care contributions upon retirement. The legislature clearly intended to create a finite class of public employees eligible for retirement that would not have health care premium contributions withheld from their monthly retirement allowance. The petitioner here was never part of that class. The class of public employees who received free benefits in their retirement years was fixed as of the date that Chapter 78 was enacted. So for us, this is phenomenal because this reinforces the position that we've been taking, especially during negotiations. So I think that was a great update for us. I don't know anybody who's ever been dealing with that. That seems to always come up in negotiations and they're always trying to argue it away. Now it's something that you can negotiate away, but it's not something that you have to give them. Oh, we have a question here.
Yeah, John, one question came up for Judy as you were going through that. Judy, I don't know if you're still there, but question that was posed was, did your town collect interest for sewer last year? And if so, how did you handle the fact that now technically with Murphy's changed the rules, it should not have been charged in 2021?
Okay, so my town did collect interest on sewer for 2021. I am an accelerated sale town in Mine Hill. I took sewer to tax lien sale. It was a redemption prior to the January update to the executive order. So it became a moot point as far as the tax lien sale was concerned. The interest that was collected for 2021 sewers was left up to a discussion between the property owner and the municipal council or the municipal attorney. So I do not know what the outcome of that was, but there's not been a refund posted to the guy's account.
Thank you.
No worries.
Anybody else have any questions?
Oh, looks like they're all answered. Looks like everybody's ready to go on a Friday.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're question free. Judy, thanks again.
No worries. You guys have a great weekend. Everybody stay safe and be well.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you, Judy.
John, you want to wrap up? I think that covers what we were going to cover.
Yeah, those were our topics for today. I hope everybody got a little bit of something out of it. I always say, you know, at least if you get one thing, then it was worth coming. So hopefully you did, because we had really some good speakers here and some good topics today. So again, I want to thank you all for coming out. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. We enjoy doing these things. We enjoy having you. Someday here, we're going to do something live, and we're going to do it live and virtual at the same time. So I look forward to seeing all your faces. So we'll see you around, and thank you again. Thank you to everybody, John, Bud, and all of our speakers. So,
And Katie, if it weren't for Katie, we wouldn't be organized.
absolutely, absolutely. Katie keeps us on track here. So thank you,
Thanks,
Katie.
guys. Thanks, everybody. Have a
All
good
right,
rest of your
great.
day.
Have a great
Take
weekend.
care.